in our districts, most of the members of the House, at least the House Republicans did at least, 6 weeks they spent in their district, and many of them will tell you, and they've said publicly and privately, they did some of the best work of their career because they were right there with their constituents at home, in their districts, in their counties, and their parishes, in our case in Louisiana, working with their constituents and helping them navigate the consequences of the Democrats' pointless political games in the shutdown. They did some really important work. And we are ready and eager now to get back to the legislative session work, the other side of this job, so that we can deliver on our promises to the American people. The Republican Party has been doing this, and we will continue. We're going to continue to reduce the cost of health care. We got big plans to do that. We're going to continue reducing prices and the cost of living for American families. And of course, to finish the rest of the appropriations government funding process. We've been needing to do that, and we are already working around the clock to accomplish those objectives. But with so many pressing issues on our plate, just very frustratingly to us, the Democrats are delaying that work even further with a political show vote. They're forcing a political show vote on the Epstein files. So we're just going to address that right at the top here this morning because they've spent so much time, the Democrats have, spinning the facts and trying to confuse the people that I wanted to come in this morning and just clearly explain for the people back home how we got here and why this vote is happening right now. First, a quick review of the relevant history here. For 4 long years under the previous administration, under the Biden-Harris administration, Democrats insisted there was no border crisis. Remember, they told you that that wasn't a problem at all. They dismissed inflation as transitory. That's what they told us. They told the American people not to believe what we could all see with our own eyes, that there was an obvious mental and physical decline on the part of President Biden individually. And now, seemingly overnight, these same cast of characters, they've taken a sudden and urgent interest in the Epstein investigation. Suddenly, it's all in the name of transparency. That's what they're trying to tell us. But the truth is, the biggest proponents of this discharge petition were never actually interested in transparency or ensuring justice or protecting victims of this unspeakable tragedy, the Epstein evils. And how do we know that? Because the Democrats had every one of the Epstein files in their possession for the 4 long years of the Biden administration. The Biden Department of Justice had the files the entire time. And not a single one of the people who are so loud and animated right now, they never said anything about it for all those 4 years. None of them held press conferences. None of them demanded the release of the documents. And under Biden's DOJ, when they prosecuted just Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, not a single one of these Democrats or any of the proponents of the discharge ever made any noise about that at all. So it's fair for the American people to ask the question, why now? Why suddenly are they so interested? They have such an urgent interest in the Jeffrey Epstein matter. The truth is simple and straightforward and obvious for anyone who is willing to look at it objectively. Clearly, this is a political exercise for Democrats and a few others, sadly, and it is as deceitful and dishonest as their pointless stunt to shut down the government. Same ideology behind this. Democrats are trying to use the Epstein matter as a political weapon to distract from their own party's failures. And in a desperate attempt, they're trying to somehow tie President Trump to the scandal. President Trump has nothing to do with it. He has said himself he has nothing to hide. And that's clearly what they've been trying to do. They're trying to attack President Trump. This is what they've done. They weaponized the justice system over the last several years to go after him, and this is their latest attempt. And they don't have a platform or a principle to defend on the Democrat Party side, so they put all their eggs in this basket. And that's why you hear endlessly about Epstein, Epstein, Epstein. Everything's about Epstein. Now, this was an unspeakable tragedy, we said that. And we have great compassion for the victims. And I'm heartened that I met with the victims. Our House Oversight Committee members met with the victims, and they deserve justice. It has been too long delayed. Not just justice for what they were made to endure, but also we need answers on why it took so long for the Department of Justice itself to do that job under previous leadership. Republicans, meanwhile, are working in earnest to deliver transparency to the American people, and we're working to do that in a responsible manner that does no further harm to these innocent people and the victims who have been wrapped into this. There are a few key facts here that everybody needs to understand. First, I mentioned the House Oversight Committee doing its work. That is a bipartisan effort. They are already producing far more than the discharge petition even anticipates. Chairman Comer is our chair of oversight. Some of the biggest bulldogs in Congress serve on that committee, you all know, and I've mentioned this so many times. They have been, on the Republican and Democrat side, they're deeply dug in. They've been working around the clock. They worked even through the government shutdown, and there were tranches of documents that were released even over that period. So far, by last count, it's over 65,000 documents, Epstein file documents, that are now out in the public for everyone to review. That includes tens of thousands of pages from the Epstein estate. And that includes Epstein's flight logs, his personal financial records and ledgers, his daily calendars, and so much more. And none of that is even written or included in the discharge petition. So in other words, the Oversight Committee is doing far more than the discharge even anticipates, and the most valuable information thus far has come from the Epstein estate files. That was produced because of the work of the Oversight Committee that is doing that in a professional, robust manner, using the full subpoena authority of the U.S. Congress. From the very beginning, our side has been insistent that this matter must be handled very carefully and with utmost caution and care for the victims. We want maximum transparency. We have always been about that. We want every single person who had any scintilla, there's any scintilla of evidence that they were involved in the Epstein evils, they need to be brought to justice, and it should have been done a long time ago. We need to find out who those people are. But in the meantime, you have to remember there are real people's, innocent people's lives at stake here, and young victims who don't want to be dragged into this political game because it could hurt further what they've already endured. They would be made to suffer more harm if Congress is not careful in what we're doing. And unlike our very important work that's underway in the House Oversight Committee, the Democrat-led discharge petition would carelessly dump thousands of documents without proper protections for the innocent. I brought a chart in here this morning. I want to illustrate for you what we are concerned with. Now, I was a federal court litigator. The members of our House Judiciary Committee, Republicans in particular, have many of these concerns. You have Chairman Jim Jordan and attorneys like Chip Roy, who's running for Attorney General of Texas now. You have Brad Knott, who's a former federal prosecutor, many members on the committee. Andy Biggs is running for governor of Arizona. They're lawyers, and they understand that the way the discharge petition was drafted is haphazard and dangerous. This is why we have been opposed to this point, okay? And I could be here for a long time going through all the details of it, but the big concern we've all had all along is that the House bill, if it's passed in its current form and it was signed into law, it is dangerously flawed. And our problem and our frustration is there's no way for us in the House to amend it or correct these problems because the authors of the discharge will not allow it. And that's one of our great frustrations. Let me just very quickly, we have a legal document that the lawyers, we have all drafted to explain all this, but let me give you five quick, maybe the top 5 concerns about it, and there are more. But as drafted, the discharge petition, it fails to fully protect victim privacy. I'm going to read you an excerpt out of our legal document we put together to explain all this. Congress should give the Attorney General broader authority to redact all the victim information. The discharge doesn't do that. This would prevent the release of information that could be used to unmask victims who have chosen to remain anonymous. Now, you have some very brave women who have come forward and put their names and faces out there and done press conferences and explained that justice is overdue, and our hearts go out to them, and they are heroes. But you have as many as 1,000 women, by some of the accounts, who may be caught up in this. And the vast majority of them have not come forward, probably for obvious reasons. They don't want to be unmasked. But the discharge petition doesn't have adequate protections. It risks re-victimizing those who were trafficked and exploited. And the courts have recognized this concern, by the way. I'll read you a quick excerpt. On August 20th of this year, Judge Richard Berman of the Southern District of New York issued an order denying the DOJ's request to release Epstein grand jury materials, noting, quote, names and identifying information of victims appear in the subject materials, unquote. Judge Berman then quoted a letter related to the victims' concerns, which stated the following, quote, transparency cannot come at the expense of the very people whom the justice system is sworn to protect, unquote. And importantly, the judge quoted a letter from one of the victims. In the proceedings, she is named as Jane Doe 2. She said this is one of the victims, quote, I beg the court to make sure it is of the utmost priority that in any sort of release, all and every detail that could possibly reveal our identities be redacted. The victims of Epstein's evils deserve that protection, and the discharge does not currently provide it, okay? Number two, the discharge petition could create new victims, okay? Because it requires the DOJ to release information even in cases where the DOJ or the FBI has already reviewed it and determined it is not credible, it is false information. Doing this and requiring this to come out could ruin the reputations of completely innocent people, such as those who have may just have known Epstein but knew nothing of his crimes, or whose names he exploited. Think of this, innocent people whose names he exploited and used to try to get close to his intended victims. Their names may be in these files, and they had nothing to do with this. And so by just haphazardly releasing it, you're going to destroy their reputations. Releasing information containing the names of innocent people would subject those innocent people to a guilt by association. It would create an entirely new group of victims who have no means to clear their names. That's a concern of Congress, and it should be. It should be. Number three, the discharge in its current form fails to prohibit the release of child sexual abuse materials. That is a term of art. It's called CSAM, okay? It's defined in the U.S. Code. The discharge is so haphazardly written because, remember, it's just a political exercise for these guys. They don't seem to care about this, but they cited the wrong section of the U.S. Code. So when they say that we don't want child pornography to come out, child sexual abuse materials, of course, we don't want that released. They wrote this thing so quickly that they cited the wrong section. So you know what that means? It means that it doesn't really bestow any real legal authority on the Attorney General to redact those materials. And that would compel the DOJ to release that stuff into the public. Every single person in this room knows that's wrong, and you should stand against it. But that's what the discharge says. Number four, it jeopardizes the future federal investigations of the United States. Why? Because the discharge only allows the Attorney General to redact limited portions of records that could publicly identify individuals who were promised confidentiality. In this scenario, you're talking about whistleblowers, you're talking about confidential informants who came forward and gave information and evidence in exchange for agreeing to have their identities not revealed. Violating confidentiality, imagine the chilling effect that would have on future investigations. Who's going to want to come forward if they think Congress can take a political exercise and reveal their identities? Who's going to come talk to prosecutors? It's very dangerous. It would deter future whistleblowers and informants. And the release of that could also publicly reveal the identity, by the way, of undercover law enforcement officers who are working in future operations. Dangerous stuff, and they seem not to care. And by the way, I'm going to remind you again, we went to the authors. We asked the authors of the discharge to change this, and they said jump in the Potomac, all right? Number five, national security concerns, okay? The discharge requires the Attorney General to release within 30 days, quote, classified information to the maximum extent possible. This ignores the principle that declassification should always rest, and always has rested, with the agency that originated the intelligence. Why? So that they can protect their critical sources and methods. It is incredibly dangerous to demand that officials or employees of the DOJ declassify materials that originated in other agencies, in intelligence agencies. I could go on. I won't be here all morning, but there's a lot of problems. There's also a lot of legal scholars, and I'm among them, who are concerned that that you've got problems with grand jury secrecy. We know Rule 6E of the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure prohibits the release of grand jury materials, but the way the discharge is drafted, you can make an argument that it requires all that to come out, and that is a serious problem. Grand juries are not adversarial, okay? There's no opportunity there for cross-examination. You can't disprove evidence. You can't challenge the evidence in any way. And if Congress goes in and breaks that seal and just starts releasing sensitive grand jury materials and allegations like that, it raises a risk that the grand jury process will be politicized in the future. And that's a whole other danger that we could talk about all day. I'm gonna wrap this up and just say that Republicans support maximum transparency. We always have. The President of the United States supports maximum transparency. You've heard him say it in his own words. But he has had the same concerns that I've just articulated here, and we've talked about that. All of us have had these concerns, and we understand that we have a responsibility to innocent people and victims that is not properly guarded by the discharge petition. And that's why we're so incensed about that. We've got to make sure that that we disclose the names of anybody who aided or conspired in any way with Jeffrey Epstein. But at the same time, you've got to make sure that innocent people are protected. So we have to do this in a way that doesn't violate victim privacy, that doesn't create new victims, that doesn't disclose the names of any whistleblower or informant, that causes the release of grand jury materials or child sexual abuse materials, or undermines our national security. And I think everybody of good conscience and common sense would say, of course you have to do that. But here we are. So the discharge petition got its 218th signature, and it is going to go forward. It is going to pass because it only takes 218. And we know that the Democrats have disregarded all these concerns, and they're going to move it forward anyway. So all the people of good conscience here say, we've registered our concerns, we stated our opposition as long as possible, but we're also for maximum transparency. So what am I to do as a leader in a situation like this? I call my counterpart in the Senate, Leader Thune, and I talked him through this with him and shared our deep concerns. And of course, they share those concerns as well. And so I'm very confident that when this moves forward in the process, if and when it is processed in the Senate, which there's no certainty that that will be, that they will take the time methodically to do what we have not been allowed to do in the House, to amend this discharge petition and to make sure that these protections are there. The authors of the discharge did not allow us to do that here. That's the rules here. But in the Senate, they can correct it. So under that circumstance, because of that, we know there's serious deficiencies. We know that the work of our colleagues in the Senate can address that and will. They're very conscientious and concerned, as we are, about all this. As we've insisted from the very beginning, Republicans are the only party trying to make a material difference in ensuring maximum transparency. Oh, by the way, I'll just tell you, I put the bill on the floor for unanimous consent last Wednesday night. And guess who objected to it? The Democrats, okay? If this is so urgent and they were so concerned about getting this done and seeing justice be done and all that, they would not have blocked the request, okay? This is about politics. They blocked our unanimous consent motion to expedite their bill and made us waste all this additional time so they could have a show vote today. Republicans are ready to get the job done, to move forward so we can continue to get on to these important issues of dealing with what the American people demand and deserve for us to deal with. And so I want to leave you with this thought. Everybody should think long and hard about who here is acting truthfully, honestly, and in good faith. It is not the Democrat Party that has obfuscated and blatantly lied for the last 4 years about all these things. It is not the Democrats who shut down the government for their own selfish political purposes. It is not the Democrats who blocked the passage of this discharge a week ago because they wanted to have a political moment. It is the Republicans who are acting in good faith, and I believe the American people are going to see that and understand it. I'm going to vote to move this forward. I think it could be close to a unanimous vote because everybody here, all the Republicans, want to go on record to show they're for maximum transparency, but they also want to note that we're demanding that this stuff get corrected before it is ever moves through the process and is in the country that we got to get to. And that's what we really wanted to talk about this morning. Affordability issues are real, and the Democrats themselves created the crisis. Remember, over the last 4 years of the Biden administration, they spent like drunken sailors, and when you throw a bunch of new money into the system, it makes inflation rise, right? Republicans are ready and eager to continue our work to clean up the mess that the Democrats made. We've been doing that already, and we're going to continue to do it. Joining the leadership team this morning to discuss our record-setting success and our continued efforts to bring back affordability, to lower the cost of living, to lower the cost of health care, and have abundant American energy are two of our Republican colleagues who are leading the charge on this issue. And Chairman Brett Guthrie, you'll hear from in a moment from Energy and Commerce. We'll speak with you, and Congressman Nick Begich of Alaska, great state of Alaska, is going to address it as well. But I'll first turn it over to our chair of our conference, Lisa McClain.
Thank you. Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome back. So let me start with this. House Republicans will not allow Democrats to distract us. And we will not allow any more obstructions to stop us from doing the work of the American people. Because the American people sent us here to do a job, and that's what we intend to do. The Democrats' shutdown never stopped us. The countless witch hunts against President Trump never stopped us either. And the latest discharge petition is just another Democrat distraction. And I can assure you that won't stop us either, because the American people actually expect us to do our jobs and not to distract and obstruct. For more than 40 days, Democrats inflicted needless pain on hardworking Americans. And I ask you this, for what? For what did all of these Americans suffer pain? They did it to use the American people's pain as political leverage. And let that sink in for a second. And don't take my word for it, take Catherine Clark's word for that. They used the leverage for $1.5 trillion of a wish list for that Americans' families just simply can't afford. But Democrats, they didn't get a single one of their demands because House Republicans actually stayed united. And now we're taking that momentum into the fight that matters most to the American people. This week, House Republicans will pass consequential bills to make energy costs more affordable. Bills that will lower energy costs for hardworking families, bills that will build on the work that we've achieved to unleash American energy that we passed in the Working Families Tax Cuts. Bills that increase energy production, which you'll hear from Representative Begich and Chairman Guthrie, that cut red tape and drive down prices for every single American. And contrast that to what will the Democrats do? They will almost certainly vote no. But ask yourself why. Why? It's because their radical left won't let them vote yes. So again, Republicans want to bring down energy costs. That's why we will vote yes on the bill. Democrats have a lot of talking points, but their actions will say no. We don't want to bring down energy costs for Americans, and they will vote no, right? So at some point, y'all need to ask the Democrats, when will your actions match your words? Because they don't. The contrast is crystal clear. Republicans will always fight to make energy more affordable for the American people. Now, the Democrats, they'll talk about it, but when the rubber meets the road and they have to vote, watch how they vote. They will absolutely vote no. So while Democrats prioritize the wishes of their radical base, we will keep moving forward with our agenda that actually lowers costs for the American people, forward with solutions that makes America affordable again, and we will move forward with the momentum the American people entrusted us with. Because House Republicans aren't here to play politics, or we aren't here to obstruct or distract. We're here to deliver affordability and low cost. We're here to drive down energy costs, and we're here to make America more affordable again. And with that, I will bring up our chairman, Mr. Brett Guthrie.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here today. It's an interesting time. It's a challenging time, but an extremely interesting time in the American energy industry. If you look at the last generation, we've had a generation of flat generation. We've had a generation of flat demand. And so those have worked and made people be comfortable because we were deindustrializing in our state. So that's not the proper path, the way that we have to take. So what are we seeing now? We're seeing a pent-up demand for energy. We're seeing it because of the growth in our industry, the reindustrialization that's coming because of President Trump, and also the growth of AI and data centers that are coming. And so what's important, we have to address this for the cost of the American people. If you think about it, if you have flat generation and increase in demand, what's going to happen? We have to expand access to American energy. We have it, it's in abundance, we can produce it, and we have to deliver it, and we have to make it where people can use it. It's also a geopolitical battle. AI is either going to be won by us, who's going to control the data that flows around the world, is going to be the values of America, is it going to be the values of China. It's a geopolitical battle that we're in. And we know what not to do because you can look at Europe. Europe and Germany, their energy prices are 3 times ours. Could you imagine competing in the world if you set your energy prices because of decisions your government made to be 3 times the power of ours? The people in the AI industry have no doubt that America can win this battle. They say we have the brain power. Americans have the brain power. We have the money. We have the capital to invest. What they don't have is access to the energy. And the roadblock to the access of energy is getting permits and being able to move energy forward. So this week we're going to work on 2 bills. One, this is actually on fuels and gasoline as refineries. We haven't built a new refinery in America since the 1970s. So Bob Latta has a bill to look at our refining capacity. You can drill all the oil you want and have all the gas you want, but if you don't refine it, make it to products people use, then you still have a shortage and limit. So we got a refinery bill before us. And also in the geopolitical, I know that the price of natural gas around the world is important. You know who it's important to? It's important to Russia because selling natural gas is how they fund their army. And so we also have a provision. Joe Biden, during the height of the invasion of Ukraine, put a ban on natural gas being exported out of our country, and where the Germans were begging for it. I was in a meeting where high-level officials were begging for our liquid natural gas, and so August Pfluger has a bill to reverse any future administration from doing that. We want energy dominance. We had it in the big, beautiful bill. We've had it in almost every committee hearing, and we're going to work together through transportation, Sam Graves, through the chairman, Bruce Westerman, and Natural Resources, and our group on energy and commerce to make sure we deliver the energy we need for America to be successful in this geopolitical battle and winning the AI battle. But so people, when they turn their lights on and off in their home, can have affordable power. And one of the great resources of power and one of the most beautiful places in our great country is in Alaska. Even at 46 below zero, in Fort Greely, Alaska, if you happen to go to Northern Warfare School, you can sit around and look around and go, wow, this is a stunningly beautiful place. And so I'm glad to hand this over to my good friend from Alaska, Nick Begich.
Thank you, Chairman. You know, it is cold in Alaska.
It is in
46 below is not as cold as it gets. It can get minus 70 or worse.
Cold enough for me.
You know, every product in America is an energy product. Whether you're producing that product, whether you're sending that product to a grocery store, whether you're going to the grocery store to pick up that product, whether you're going to visit family for Thanksgiving, you're expending energy. And if we want to address affordability in this nation, the best way to do that is to address the fundamental cost of energy. If we're going to do that, we've got to produce more of it. And I happen to be from the great state of Alaska, where we do have abundant natural gas, where we do have abundant oil reserves. But in the previous 4 years, under the Biden administration, we were not allowed to access those important resources for the American people. In fact, under Joe Biden, there were more than 70 executive orders and actions that specifically targeted Alaska, preventing us from developing the oil and gas resources of the state and the critical minerals that we're hearing so much about today. Today's bills help unlock the resources of Alaska for the benefit of the American people and do so in a durable fashion. In the National Petroleum Reserve of Alaska and the 1002 area of our North Slope. That's 20 million acres unlocked for the benefit of the people of this nation. And I want to thank the leadership team who has prioritized affordability in this country again, who understands that affordability begins with resources and our ability to add value to those resources. Alaska is ready to be a part of that solution, and I'm proud today to introduce these bills, get them passed, and send them over to the Senate. Thank you, and I turn it over to our great whip, Emmer.
Thank you. These days, anti-Trump temper tantrums seem to be the Democrat Party's MO. Instead of helping us, Republicans in the House, the President in the White House, and the Senate majority, instead of helping us secure our border, cut taxes, and make life more affordable for the American people, Democrats have shown time and time again that they're more interested in opposing President Trump and his successful agenda at every turn. But their obstruction and partisan games will not deter our efforts to deliver countless wins for the American people. This week, House Republicans are returning to Washington with a packed agenda, full of promises kept. Where the Biden administration and climate alarmists stifled our nation's energy production and caused prices to skyrocket, House Republicans and President Trump are restoring America's energy security and ensuring affordability. Where Democrats put violent criminals above innocent Americans, Republicans are ensuring our communities are safe from dangerous offenders. And where Democrats chase headlines and mislead the public, Republicans are actually pursuing transparency and justice. The contrast could not be more clear. Republicans govern, Democrats obstruct. We already passed the largest middle-class tax cut in American history with absolutely no help from Democrats. And that was just the beginning. Now, as you see, that we're back from this ridiculous, needless shutdown caused by Democrats. We're moving full steam ahead to make up for the days that they have taken away with their delusional shutdown. And with that, I'll turn it over to our leader, Steve Scalise.
Well, thank you, Whip. And it's good to be back. It's good to have the Democrat shutdown ended and the pain, the suffering that went on for way too long finally be over. And now to see the House back doing its business. And of course, we missed a few weeks, and so we're making up for lost time. We have a very robust schedule this week. As you can see, full 5-day work week. We're going to be working and having some late night votes. Today we have 3 vote series going into the night, and our members have rolled up their sleeves and are ready to get back to work too. The committees are going to be meeting into the night this week and beyond to catch up and get back to focusing on those issues that we've been fighting for this entire Congress, and that is fighting for those families who have been struggling under the failed Biden agenda. All we saw under the Biden and Democrat agenda was higher costs for families, higher inflation, higher interest rates, open borders, chaos around the world. And President Trump has reversed that quickly. As you look at all of the things that this president has done, working with this Congress, we have been focused on fixing the problems that Biden created and then really setting a new course, getting this country back on track, lowering costs for families. You heard Chairman Guthrie and Congressman Begich talk about this great energy agenda that we're continuing to deliver on. Of course, in the working families tax cut, so we had a lot of provisions in that bill. In fact, that Congressman Begich himself brought forward to open up areas in Alaska. I walked the Alaskan pipeline in Section 1002 of the North Slope, and to see all of the ability to produce energy in America that had been shut down under Joe Biden. We couldn't even produce the energy we know we have here in America because of stupid policies by the Biden administration. And we've been reversing that. Many of those provisions that Congressman Begich campaigned on, he already delivered on in the working families tax cut, but there's more to do. And so we're bringing some of those bills to the floor this week. You're going to see the Department of Interior probably this week, hopefully in the next 2 weeks, roll out their 5-year leasing plan for the Gulf of America. Again, something that President Biden shut down that drove investment to foreign countries. We saw billions of dollars of energy investment moving to foreign countries because Biden shut down America. Well, America's open up for business again. And that means more jobs here in America, but really importantly for families, lower energy costs. And energy costs affect everything that we do. When you go to the grocery store, lower energy costs mean lower food costs for families. And so we're going to keep delivering on that agenda. Obviously, this week, it's going to be a very aggressive schedule, and we're going to continue to move bills in the future. Something else the Democrats broke, we talked about this a lot during the shutdown here at this podium, and that is the healthcare crisis in America. The current law in healthcare is the Affordable Care Act. I think everybody would recognize it's unaffordable for millions of American families. And yet they have dumped more families into that plan, and the cost increase are evident. 80% increase in costs for families since Obamacare passed. And yet, as the Affordable Care Act has failed to work for families, Democrats continue to try to shove hundreds of billions of dollars more into that failed program and not giving relief to families, but giving COVID subsidies to insurance companies. That's what Democrats were fighting for. You saw President Trump today saying one of the things we want to do as Republicans is give those tax credits to families, not to insurance companies like Democrats want to do, but to give it to families. We've been working before the shutdown with our three relevant committees, Chairman Guthrie's committee in Energy and Commerce, Chairman Jason Smith in Ways and Means, and Chairman Wahlberg over in Education and Workforce. The three committees that work on healthcare policy to focus on legislation that would actually lower costs for families and give families options so they're not trapped in the Unaffordable Care Act policies that drive up their premiums. And so we've brought bills. We had some of those we talked about in the working families tax cuts that didn't make it all the way through the process. We're going to be coming back to that. We moved PBM reform last year, very bipartisan bill that Chuck Schumer sat on because he and Democrats don't want to lower costs for families. We do. And we're going to keep bringing those bills over the next few months. We're working with all of our members. We talked about it again today in conference. But we've been working on it for months. We've been bringing bills to the floor. And Democrats, sadly, have walked away from this because all they want to do is force people into unaffordable products, the Unaffordable Care Act. They want families to have to pay more in premiums because they want a single-payer, government-run healthcare system. It has failed the American people, and they deserve better, and we're going to deliver better for American families. And finally, today we released the calendar for next year, so I know you're all interested in what that's going to be. We're going to have a very busy agenda next year. We're going to continue to deliver here in this Congress for American families. We've got a lot to do this year, and we're going to be doing a lot more this year. But we're also going to have a very busy agenda next year. Democrats they're in disarray right now as a party, but they've got to decide. Are they going to work with us here in this Congress to actually deliver for the American people? Are they going to continue to have, as the Speaker talked about, that Trump derangement syndrome? All they do is wake up every day and say, how can they oppose Donald Trump, no matter what he wants to do? When Donald Trump wants to help families, all they do is wake up and say, what is he doing? And they try to do the opposite because the radical Mondami wing of the party just wants to fight President Trump. Well, that's not where America is. America wants to get results. America believes in common sense. We're going to have a resolution Friday that says we stand up against socialism and the atrocities of it. It's not just the bad policies. It's led to murder all around the world where it's been tried. And they don't teach that history, unfortunately, enough in our schools. And so a lot of young people don't even get exposed to the atrocities of socialism. But we'll surely be talking about it and voting on it this Friday. A pretty easy vote, I think, for most people. Hopefully they say, no, we believe in freedom, opportunity, and we stand against socialism. We're going to have that opportunity this week as well, while we're also focusing on affordability. With that, I'm sure you may have a couple of questions for the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson.
Thanks, sir. Front row, go ahead.
The president campaigned on this idea of transparency. In the name of transparency, he released the MLK files. In the name of transparency, he released the JFK files. Why not, in the name of transparency, call on the president to just release the full Epstein files? He doesn't even need Congress to have this vote.
Well, the president's made very clear his position over the last few days. His truth post over the weekend and what he said. I mean, he had a press gaggle yesterday. He said the same thing. He says release all the files. He's been saying that. What he was counting on and what we were insistent upon is using the processes of Congress, as I explained here in great detail this morning, to do it in the right way so that it's not haphazard. And Congress has a role to do that. The Oversight Committee is the appropriate place for this to be done, and that is what is happening right now, as you've all seen. And so we preferred that route. And by the way, as I mentioned, that route is more comprehensive than anything the discharge petition would accomplish anyway, because it didn't even mention the Epstein files and some of these other things. I mean, the estate files. So we want the process to play out. We want it to be done in the right way. We want to do it in a way that doesn't jeopardize our legal system and doesn't inflict more harm on victims. And the president is resolute on that, as we have been. And that's why we opposed this gambit from the beginning. Yes?
Do you acknowledge that by voting for this distribution today, that is a reversal for you, that you could have put this on the floor months ago and not have even needed to have a discharge petition if you had supported it months ago.
No, it's not a reversal, as I just explained. We had big problems with the discharge from the moment it was filed. We talked with the authors. There was lots of people that went and pleaded with them to fix it so that everybody could be together, because we've been for maximum transparency. But again, there's a reason you have rules and processes here to ensure that this is not done haphazardly. And I was not satisfied with that. But I've been for maximum transparency from the very beginning. We wanted the process to play out. So, yes.
I understand where you're coming from with your concerns with the discharge petition. I also understand your want for transparency. In this case, you've been very clear on both those fronts for weeks. So is the reason why you're now deciding to vote for this resolution because President Trump directly said Republicans should vote for this? Because this has been your position all along, and you've made it clear you weren't in support of this resolution.
If and when the discharge reached the 218th signature, it'll be forced. And the forcing mechanism here prevents the very deliberate, professional, careful manner in which Congress is supposed to do this. I lament that. That's why I'd been opposed to it all along. But having now forced the vote, none of us want to go on record and in any way be accused of not being for maximum transparency. So the only intellectually consistent position to have right now, the only way to ensure that both those things are true at the same time, is to allow for everyone to vote their conscience and to go on record to say, of course we're for maximum transparency. Now, I'll tell you, there's a handful of Republicans, Judiciary Committee members, and a few others who are really struggling, as I have been, about whether or not they could even vote yes today because of this, because we don't have an absolute guarantee that this will be fixed in the Senate. I have a high degree of confidence in that, and that's why that's why I'll be voting yes today. And I've talked about that in great detail. We had an hour and a half long conference call on Sunday with Judiciary Committee members who are really, really concerned. I mean, they're all for maximum transparency, but they're really, really concerned about protecting the victims, and I am as well, and that's why we have gone through this whole long process. Last one, Olivia, go ahead.
On that, James Blair today at a Bloomberg event said that they're looking at ways to send millions of Americans checks from tariff dividend revenue, but without Congress being involved. Do you have concerns about them not running that sort of process through Congress?
Well, I'm not sure that's possible, and James Blair and I will have some intense fellowship about that, I'm sure. He's a good friend. We collaborate on strategy all the time, but this is an idea, I think, that makes sense. The president was talking about it as recently as yesterday. I think what I heard him say, and I haven't talked to him about it because he and I have both been so busy the last 24 hours, I'll see him in a little while, but I think what I heard him say yesterday is he's thinking about something maybe midway into next year, when the tariff revenue is realized and we can figure out what that looks like. But I think it would require an act of Congress, so we'll have to see how. I'm not sure what's being proposed, so it's sort of a hypothetical. Last one, yeah.
Getting specifically to the substance here. Reading through the bill, though, I guess I'm confused because the bill specifically says the Attorney General may withhold or redact portions related to child sexual abuse materials as defined in the law, anything jeopardizing federal investigations. It specifically says they can withhold anything containing personal identifiable information of victims, personal medical files. We know the survivors are comfortable with that. All of these things are actually in this bill.
They're not. Let me give you an example. And we could be up here for a long time. I'll litigate it with you because I brought all this stuff. All right. Okay. So the first one you mentioned. Okay. So here's the HRS 581. This is the discharge. Okay. It says on page 5, redact anything that depicts or quote depicts or contains child sexual abuse material, CSAM, as defined under 18 U.S.C. 2256. Okay. All right. So you go to 18 U.S.C. 2256. Definitions of the chapter. Nowhere in this section, okay, go look it up, all right, does it contain the definition of child sexual abuse material. So I used to litigate federal cases, and I would challenge statutes in court, okay? The language is very important and very precise. If it's not listed here and this were to become law, child sexual abuse materials are not included. They're not included for redaction, which means the Attorney General and someone there, if they interpret the discharge in the statute that it passes directly and literally, as they're supposed to do, they're required to do under the law, then you're going to have things that would qualify under child sexual abuse materials. You have child pornography included in the distribution of this stuff. We can't go for that. And why did they? No, it's not up to the Attorney General because the way it's listed in the document. No, it's not. It's not because it doesn't reference the right code section. So we could go through every one of these things. We have had a small army of lawyers going through it, because I want to make sure that all of my concerns, because I read it the first time initially and I thought, whoa, this is way out of bounds. We have in fact, we'll put on the speaker.gov. I'll put it on the website here when we leave. You'll see the summary of the legal analysis, and it goes through point by point, and it points to the specific sections in the discharge. Guys, we're not making this up, and you can take it to your counsel at your outlet's offices and have them review it, and they'll tell you the same thing. This should have been done in a much more careful manner, and it was not. And I'm going to point out again, when the authors were asked to fix it, they said they weren't interested in doing that. Okay, why? Because this is a raw and obvious political exercise. Again, I'm just going to leave you with this question. You should go ask them all. If you were so concerned about the Epstein files and protecting the victims, why didn't you do a darn thing about it for the 4 years of the Biden administration? All this stuff was sitting in a warehouse, and nobody said a word about it. They didn't care. Now they're doing it. We all know why, because they're trying to attack President Trump. That's it. Thank you. Thank you.